Now that you understand the structure of the nose, we're going to see how to apply that information to actual noses by tracing over these photo references. This will give you a chance to see how to modify the rhythms and planes to match different nose types. Okay, let's start with this front view. To begin, I'll reduce the opacity of the reference. And I'll go ahead and lock it so we don't accidentally draw on it. And then I'll create a new layer on top of it. Let's call this layer Simplified Nose. And we'll draw on this layer to create the tracing. If you're using traditional pencil and paper, you could simply print out the reference and trace on top of it. Okay, I'll begin by establishing the glabella. The glabella usually sits at the top of the nose bridge and between the eyebrows. But other than that, we don't really have a super obvious landmark that tells us where the glabella should be. So to some extent, we do have to guess at it. But that's okay, we don't have to be perfectly precise. The job of the glabella is to act as a home base from which we can build the rest of the nose. So as long as we're in the general ballpark, it should do its job. Next, I'll draw in the front plane of the nose bridge. The front plane will widen towards the tip and then turn the corner to come to a point. Then I'll draw in the center line that divides the bottom plane into two parts. Next, I'll draw in the edge of the bottom plane. His nostril is curling quite a bit, so I'll have to change the shape of this edge in order to match the reference. And then we'll do the same for the other side. And lastly, I'll draw in the side plane. His nose is quite wide towards the bottom, so the side plane has to angle out quite a bit in order to connect to the bottom plane. Okay, so that's it for the simplified nose. Let's turn off the reference and see what that looks like. So as you can see, with just a few simple lines, we're able to capture the basic structure of this nose. If I was drawing this nose myself, this is what I would visualize on top of the reference, and then I would draw this on my drawing paper. And it would give me a very good scaffolding on which to build the rest of the details. By the way, if you enjoyed this lesson, be sure to check out the full nose drawing course at mydrawingtutorials.com/nose. It will dive way deeper into the subject and teach you everything you need to draw realistic and dynamic noses. Okay, back to the lesson. So now all we have to do is add in the rhythm lines to make this a little bit more realistic. Okay, I'll start by drawing in the connection between the nasal bone and lateral cartilage. Again, we'll have to guess at where this is because it's not super obvious on his nose. Next, we'll draw in the lateral cartilage. This one is a little bit more obvious. In fact, on his nose, we can actually see the area where the lateral cartilage connects with the tip of the nose. And the separation between the left and right ala cartilage at the tip of the nose is pretty obvious here as well. So we'll add in that line to depict it. Then we'll draw in the heart-shaped rhythm lines that connect the tip of the nose with the wings of the nostril. Then I'll draw in the opening of the nostril. And lastly, I'll draw in the separation between the wings of the nostril and the tip of the nose. Here, his nostrils are more of a bell shape, so I'm going to deviate from the standard model and make this separation angle out slightly in order to match his nose type. Alright, so that's our rhythm line. Now let's turn off the reference to see what that looks like. Okay, it looks pretty good. Okay, so now that we have all this information filled in, we can lighten these and draw in the planes. So I'll go ahead and lower the opacity for this layer. And then lock it as well. Then I'll put a new layer on top, and let's call this one nose plane. Okay, again, I'll start by reestablishing the glabella. Next, I'll draw in the nasal bone and lateral cartilage. Then we'll add some thickness to the lateral cartilage and nasal bone. Then we'll add some thickness to the glabella as well. Then I'll design the shape of the front plane of the nose tip. Then we'll draw in the bottom plane as they turn and connect to the face. Now I'll change this edge of the bottom plane into smaller line segments. And I'll make sure to show how the nostril curls up as it connects to the face. And we'll just redraw in the opening of the nostril. Next, I'll put in the side plane of the tip of the nose. And then we'll close out the shape of the wings of the nostril. And then lastly, I'll draw in the side planes of the bridge. The side plane is pretty clear on his nose, so it's pretty easy to know how we should design them. And even though the left side of the nose is in shadow and we can't see it as clearly, we can simply copy the information that we established on the right side over to the left. And it also helps to make the nose look more symmetrical, which is always a good thing. Also, with the side planes, I'm deviating from the standard model in that I'm not putting in the vertical plane breaks. I could, but I didn't feel like it was necessary here because the side of his bridge was pretty smooth. So again, that's something that's discretionary, and you can definitely adapt the standard model to fit the person that you're drawing. Okay, so that's the nose plane. Let's turn off the reference and see what that looks like. And I just want to point out that this is not the only way to break down the nose into planes. There are many different ways to do it, and in fact, if I were to do this nose again, I would probably come up with something slightly different each time. The shape of the planes might be slightly different, there might be more or less of them, but the overall structure of the nose would still be the same. So I encourage you to copy and study from the examples in this course, but feel free to experiment with your own designs as well. Once you get good at these tracing exercises, you'll find that you can look at a nose and break it down into its structural components in your mind, which of course will help you tremendously when you're drawing and shading it. So go ahead and give this exercise a try, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you did, make sure to check out the full nose drawing course at mydrawingtutorials.com/nose. You'll get hours of additional lessons and step-by-step exercises, and learn things like how to draw and shade the nose from a bunch of different angles, how to exaggerate your reference and draw stylized or cartoonish noses, how to draw noses from your imagination, and a whole lot more. So if you're ready to improve your nose drawing skills, head over to mydrawingtutorials.com/nose or click the link below.